All right, hey everybody. So this is Josh Bruce, and this one's going to be a little out of cycle. I think I'm figuring out what sort of posting cadence I want to use, which is basically once a week on Mondays, but or Sundays. But this one's going to be posted a little bit off to the side because it's just something I thought would be interesting for you guys. All right. What we're looking at is the PHP HTML component, which is sort of the base of the UI library and a bunch of other things that you've seen if you've watched other videos. And this was written at a time, I don't know what all experimentation I was doing, but there's definitely some odd, or things that I consider to be odd. For example, the double conditional, which can also fall through, and also there's inside the component class itself, you can sort of see these underscores for the instance properties. I don't really do that. I don't remember ever really doing that. And also a lot of comments, and I think the comments are there mainly because I was actually playing around with API documenters as a way to create static websites. And so what I want to do is I actually just want to kind of clean all this stuff up and make it a little bit easier to deal with. So first things first, we're going to go ahead and delete this, because if you want that sort of information, it should be captured in the README, which it is. I think that's almost a verbatim of the README. And basically, my running thought on comments is that, my running commentary on comments is that for the most part, they're pretty well pointless. And you can see I was also actually playing with following PSR 12 strictly. But so anyway, so that's kind of where we're at, is basically don't comment unless there's actually a need for comments, and a lot of times you need comments to basically explain why you're doing certain things, like a back-to-back conditional. So basically what those two conditionals check for is that is text, right, is the element that was passed in text, and is not empty. So it's also checking that args0 is set. So we're given at least a single argument, which would be the contents of the string. And so what we want to do here is return a bool, and then we're going to say if self is text and not empty, and pass in element and args, and then we're going to return the text, right? And so that makes it just a lot cleaner, and it's easier to read, right? Is text and is not empty. Go ahead and make it, right, using this class, right? So it becomes a cleaner wow, I can't English today, I'm sorry. A lot cleaner implementation. And if I still want to know the mystery math, as I tend to call it, all I have to do is go look at the implementation of is text and is not empty. So let's go ahead and run. Oh, actually, I have so let's do this. Origami, pane, create below, come in here, Command Shift P. We're looking for terminus. And we're going to go into there, and we should be able to do vendor bin PHP unit. There we go. And what was it? Command Shift? No. Control Shift? Yeah. It's been a minute since I brought up those panels. All right, and so now we can run our tests easier. And so basically, yeah, it's just easier to read, right? That call static method is just a lot easier to read, and it's a lot easier to tell, oh, if it's text and it's not empty, then go ahead and return an instance of text and make it, pass in the args. Otherwise, we're going to call something on the instance component and do something there. So let's come in here to the trait. Now, the thing about it is that since all we're changing, at least so far, is protected, right? This should all just be a refactoring, right? It's not an actual re-engineering of anything, and so that's why we shouldn't have to change our tests, right? Our tests should be fine the way that they are. And that's just an interface, which seems to be just fine. Yeah, this one actually looks just fine. Oh, except for static comes before public, right? Because it's static public function. Again, that's not the way PSR 12, which was approved, by the way. I don't know when this is going to get posted, but it was approved. So take a look at that when you get a chance. They did not include my proposal, which is fine. Okay, so here, see, like, I don't even know what this comment is about. Was I going to try JSON at some point? All right, and you can see sort of the underscores here. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight those. I'm going to say Command E. And I'm going to copy that change, hit Command G, paste, G, paste. And just kind of scan through here looking for underscores. See, that's just really hard to read. And I should just do a check for underscores. Okay. Now, let's see here. Let's go ahead and move that. Oh, and put static up front. I'm not sure. I don't think this will break the 80 character line. So I'm not sure why I put it on. Oh, it will. Okay. Yeah, I'm still not sure why I would have put that on multiple lines. So static public function make. So this is the big deal. So let's actually make that first. And I'm actually going to double check the tests just to make sure they're all passing. They are not. Cannot redeclare make. Okay. My bad. Okay, so they're all passing. So this is actually a good time for a comment. So let's do where 0 is string before first space and 1 is string after first space. Yeah. I mean, it's not saving us any lines, but it does kind of clarify what's going on if you aren't familiar with this part of the explode function from the standard library, because I wasn't. That's for darn sure. So yeah, let's keep on cruising. We're going to create the instance. Okay, so we're going to do the content. And this allows us to be able to set whether or not we want the want there to be an end tag, right? So like in PHP or in HTML, for example, you have the paragraph tag. This is the closing tag or the end tag, as the documentation says. But basically, if you say omit end tag, it's just going to give you that P. And I think I have a test that is testing for that. Yeah, omit end tag here. So you can see, like on the image tag, there's no /image, so at least not anymore. All right, so God, I can't even spell. So the reason that I don't like comments is that basically, one, they can get out of sync with what's actually happening in your code. But the other part is that it just takes up space and it's redundant if your code is somewhat readable. So this is interesting. Oh, yeah, because basically inside of the compile, like, you don't have to actually call attribute or ATTR. You don't have to call it explicitly. You can actually make it part of your compile stage. And in fact, when we come back to Amos, oh, and I changed a whole bunch of stuff. But when we come back into Amos, where we've got this ATTR, I could use compile there, but when you compile, it basically builds it out as a string. So all of these would convert to strings. And anyway, it's not that big of a deal. So anyway, So that's what that's doing. Um, let's see. So this is for the opening. Element extends. What is this all about? That's weird. All right, so this just does print, and this just does echo. Get element. God, I almost want to make that like a private method. So we're going to move that up here because compile, print, and echo are all kind of similar. And extends is basically what does let's collapse that. So this is what extends does. So basically, there's a proposal in the W3C, I think, to have a way to extend components and to help build web components. And basically so when I built the PHP HTML component, I built that in, which basically is, you can give it your custom name and CSS will find it and things like that, but it will still give you a browser-friendly version. So basically, if your browser won't handle web components and things like that, it'll fall back to being just a button. And so basically, you can say, my component, right? That way, it's your component, but that it extends the, HTML. Well, theoretically, the HTML button. So anyhow, role. And the reason for some of this stuff is because I kind of just started discovering that there were certain things that I wanted to be able to set, because like component is not supposed to be some big honking thing. It's pretty easy, right? Like it just does the web. And so basically what it does is it checks to see, or it basically outputs this string pattern, right? Less than some string, some arbitrary list of key value pairs, and then another string toward the end, right? Like it's just that string pattern. And I didn't want to get too heavy-handed into a specific implementation of that pattern, but I did find it sort of helpful when working on the HTML library itself to have role be part of the component class as opposed to one of the HTML classes or one of the HTML elements. So that's where that's from. So we have the public and private attributes. So let's go ahead and, I'm going to grab that one too, right? And so each one of these does sort of a specific thing, right? So basically, ATTR is a shorthand of add attribute, which basically will create a keyed array in the instance, and so that's sort of how stuff gets in there. And then compiling the attributes, basically this is our first sort of being opinionated, first piece of being opinionated, where basically we have is always comes first, role will come next, and then everything else comes after that. And then I'm going to leave that comment in there for now. So when we compile the attributes, notice we're doing sprint F like all the time, and we are doing a check for just straight text. Let's come back to that. So we're going to remove the comment. So get element name, I'm going to put that near get element. And basically what that's doing is HTML doesn't accept underscores, like names with underscores, to the best of my understanding. But they do have hyphens. They will do hyphens. And for PHP, it doesn't. It won't let you do function calls with a hyphen. You have to use an underscore. And so basically, what we do is we take the string, the name of the function that was called statically, and we replace the underscores with hyphens, and that basically gives us the actual element name to use in the resulting element. So here we go. So this is sort of the big deal. And basically what it is it's a loop. Let's be clear. And it basically accepts things that conform to the compile method, or the compile interface, and then basically we prepare this empty content that we're going to return, and then if content to compile is an instance of compile, then we're going to say content to compile parent is me, whatever component I am, and we're going to compile. Otherwise, if it's not an instance of compile, or doesn't adhere to that interface and is an array, then we're going to loop through and we're basically going to do the same thing. So it's yeah, it's kind of a weird loop. It's not as confusing as the other one if you saw that video, but yeah, it's definitely a weird loop. So we're going to say compile content, put that there. And so we have two other private, and I'm going to put those right after compile. So kind of going with a top-down pattern or approach. Right, and then all of this attribute stuff. here. So attribute, add attribute, compile attribute, and then you have compile content. So that makes a little bit more sense. And PHP doesn't care about the ordering, so at least for the most part. So I could actually put is web component or has end tag up at the top as well, but I don't think I'm going to. Wait, yeah, let's do that. Let's put has end tag just after omit end tag. How does it tell if it's a web component or not? Let's go ahead and put that up there too. And put it right after. Nope. Should be after extends. Yeah. All right, so that's looking pretty nice. I keep debating on whether or not to use these sprintfs, because I can't imagine that it's going to make that big of a deal to anything like performance or anything like that. But there are definitely cleaner ways. So I don't know. We can just leave them as they are for now. So yeah. Yeah, so now we got the print and the echo at the end. Seems to make a little bit more sense. This compiles everything, the content, and then some. So I think we're good there. Actually, you know what? Let's move the compile attributes and the compile content after compile. But before print. And I believe compile attributes gets called first, so we'll leave it that way. Yeah, so there we go. And so I think the comments that we have now are pretty much the ones that we actually do need. I think the little bit of cleanup that we actually did here and there is also making life a lot better. And the only reason that it didn't break anything, well, the part of the design decisions that helped make it so that it wouldn't break anything is that most of the stuff that actually gets changed or could get its name changed or anything like that, they're all private anyway. So it's not actually part of that public interface. Even all the properties, they're all protected or private. Protected because I think HTML element extends component. So yeah, I'm pretty pleased with all of this. And so also just to let the cat out of the bag, since you've been so kind as to join me here. refactor for legibility, no, readability, legibility. So what I ended up doing is I renamed all of these. So the naming convention that I'm using now for all of the libraries is the platform up front, right? So all of these are PHP. So if somebody's looking for, the API kit, they know, okay, that's the PHP version. And Laravel UI kit, oh, that's the Laravel. I should be in a Laravel environment if I'm using that. Same thing with the actual UI kit. And as you can see, we're going to have a few more libraries, open source libraries that you guys can play with if you want to. So yeah, so hopefully you'll mess around with them and let me know how you feel about it. But with that said, as always, thank you so much for making the time. I definitely do appreciate it, and have a good day. Or what do I say? I'll see you around.